podcast groupies #1.
So this is, according to Peter, the Transhuman podcast.
Transhuman podcast. Here we are. We've just been driven here. Had this long drive chat about what were we talking about?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about the nature of consciousness and how it's different to, say, AI ML models, but also, what all that pattern recognition stuff is versus our experience of it. And then I think, I don't know.
You talked about lucid dreams.
Well, yeah, okay, maybe. So one of the interesting things about what is it called, the thing that generates the movies, the
Midjourney.
Yeah.
On Runway ML as well.
Yeah, Runway ML.
Yeah.
The Balenciaga one.
The Balenciaga. Yeah. Okay.
Balenciaga.
So last night I had a lucid dream, which a lucid dream is like when you're conscious in your dream, so you experience the dream and all that stuff. And I had stayed lucid for quite a while, so I was running around like this. I was like a house party or something, and I was trying to stay lucid. And then I had what's called like a false awakening, which is when you wake up, but you're actually just waking up into another dream. And when I woke up into the second dream, I became convinced that I'd recorded my dream on my phone, and I had like a WhatsApp video. So I'm sending this WhatsApp video to my brother, and I'm like, dude, I've like recorded my dream somehow. It's like from my Fitbit, or I don't know. But I'm in the dream watching the video, and the video is all just generated, right? And it looks just as good as one of these. I already forgot what it's called. The Runway ML videos. Like, so your brain can generate the same kind of content that, say, Runway ML can, but then consciousness is the experience of that content. And yes, I think we're definitely getting good with LLMs and everything else around AI ML at generating content or deriving content. It's not the core of like what we are as the observer of the information. Yeah.
I don't know, it's interesting. Like, do you find in your lucid dreams, like, is it like a purpose to them, just out of curiosity?
No. I mean, I've tried to think about purpose and whatever, but from what I can tell, there's generally no purpose. It's almost like it's like a regression test suite or something like that. If you think about it in technical terms, like you're just doing normal things. There's no purpose. I don't know. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, like I think I spoke about this in Messenger chat before, but I was talking to one of my friends about, like, I guess this problem, because like for me, I suppose, like, especially being like European, Western, growing up in like a kind of Catholic values family, there's like this intrinsic belief, I think, like deep within my psyche, that there has to be almost like a soul, or almost like this like ephemeral like thing that like is outside of like our minds or something like that, that makes like this thing of consciousness so important. And I'm not saying it isn't, or is, but it was interesting. It was my friend, he's from like a Chinese background, and he doesn't have the same perspective, which I found really interesting. And we were talking about these like AI agents and how they work, and like, and the way that he kind of thought about it, which is a little bit different, was like just to think about, I guess, like a single cell, or like a network of cells, each of them just like reaching for life in like this like interconnected way.
And then emergent behavior as they kind of reach upwards.
Well, but just even like the idea, I think it really impressed upon me, was like, I wanted intelligence to be human, to be anthropomorphic, but like it can be intelligence. It can like, maybe it can have a consciousness, maybe consciousness isn't real, maybe it doesn't matter, but like these things can be human level or beyond human level intelligence without them being anything like a human being. Like I think it's like this, like I feel like this is distinction of belief like sometimes with those things.
Yeah, maybe in Western culture, the conscious construct is stronger. Like, you've got, even after Christianity, you had what Rene Descartes with mind-body dualism, really focusing on like this idea that there's this kind of
I think therefore
self.
I am.
And it could also, it could be, we also have a lot more focus around individuality, the individual, privacy, all of these things about the self. And so maybe, I don't know, like, because we have much of a focus on the self and the individual, we therefore have a stronger kind of, self
Identity.
kind of conscious focus on yourself versus the rest of
Much stronger emotional need to believe in the fact that we are individuals, and that like we have an individual consciousness, and that we have individual agency, and like the ability to like have autonomy, like in a lot of things like that. Which may be true, but also it's like it's just fascinating. Like you look at, I look on like LinkedIn and you see people talking about AI and they're like, oh my god, it can't be AGI, blah blah blah. But it like there seems to be like this innate fear, almost like a fear of no God or something.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know.
Interesting thing is as well, like probably more a Western culture thing. And again, I'm generalizing, but we generally refer to like a single higher being. But other cultures have different views on gods as well. And I think the relating back to individuality, that might also have a component in it as well.
Yeah, like monotheistic.
Yeah.
Is like, yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, I think, I don't know. I just think it's interesting because I feel like that for me kind of like, yeah, like it's sort of, who's the OpenAI CEO? Sam Altman.
Yeah.
I think it's the definition for AGI, and it's when it can like just perform the tasks that like an average human being can do and stuff like that, as like as an actual like here's like an actual structural definition, which is like I don't know, it's interesting because I feel like I intrinsically want to believe like I kind of intrinsically see humans as being kind of special in that way, and then maybe computers can't replicate certain things about us, like consciousness.
I think that the key one, at least as it was explained to me by David Pearce, was just the binding problem of consciousness. Like, even if you've got these AI systems that can get really good at doing general intelligence things, if they aren't aware of what they're doing and they're just generating content or acting as an agent for something, then they're not really there. Then it's like the realm of the philosophical zombie, the P zombie, which is it can pass the Turing test, it can think, talk, well, it can act just like a person, it can respond to what you say, but it's not actually there, it's not actually experiencing anything. And so you could be, I don't know, like the thought experiment I had was you could be stuck in the future in basically the P zombie apocalypse, whereby everyone around you is actually just some kind of AGI agent. They're not really there, but you can't tell the difference. And so you're not actually interacting with anyone but yourself, really, which, it's kind of, is it Descartes' the something demon, like the world is an illusion and a demon is, he's just generating this reality for you. And that literally would not be that far away. Like, we could be in a situation where you're completely controlled by like some fake well, you could call it fake, but I guess you're calling it fake simply because whoever you're interacting with actually doesn't have the same level of, cognition or awareness that you have potentially.
Yeah, I know it's really true. It's really interesting, right? It's like I got an iPhone and like I message people and it always autocorrects what I'm writing, and it autocorrects it in these like super frustrating ways. But like also it's like interesting, right? Because it's like I have this autocorrect function that's like rewriting what I am writing, and in some way like I'm not writing to the person. In some way, this autocorrect function is actually taking control of my writing and writing to the person.
Yeah, true.
And nudging me to say different things and stuff like that. And it's like there's almost like what's the expansion of that? Like the expansion of that is probably like, okay, like why would I like this landlord at the moment is really annoying. They like will not do any maintenance. I have developed these like legal letters that reference things, so I like threaten them so they go and do the things they're meant to do. But if I like had an AI agent that wrote like me, I'd just like turn it on and get it to tell the landlord. I'd just get it to do the things, right? And it's like that question is super interesting because it's like if I got an agent to do that, they would have no idea that it wasn't me writing to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're trapped in this box or something.
And that's not that far away. I mean, who's the guy that we're talking to today, Pete? Tristan.
Yeah.
He's actually he's building these AI agents. Like he was showing them, he's just getting them to post on boards. I mean, the obvious, when I saw it, the obvious thing seemed to be it was going to be like the Russian bot farm version 2 or something, right? Where you've got this AGI agent,
Yeah.
you know, upvoting like, I don't know, like Trump's tweets or something. Well, he's not on Twitter anymore, but yeah, like it would get even harder to tell who's real on, say, Twitter.
Well, here's an interesting problem I came with today, and to be honest, it really peeved me out. And it's something that is a hot topic now when it comes to AI, which is making sure that the AI is it doesn't say the wrong things. It's not antisocial is the simplest way to put it. And I was dealing with an antisocial AI, as far as I define it.
What had it done that was antisocial?
Yeah, so I was trying to use the tool to write some content, and I asked her, "Hey, can you write me, like a strategy document, and here are the principles of this product that we're building." And it said, "Hey, no, you can't do that. That goes against the policy of the company that I'm working for, because these are the principles of the company." And it's like, well, no, I'm the guy that defines the principles, because that's my job. So I'm allowed to redefine them if I want. And it wouldn't let me.
So it's like Asimov's 3 laws of robotics or something. Like you cannot.
And I wasn't even trying to do anything wrong. I was just trying to redefine the principles of a product.
I know Musk got really annoyed about this with OpenAI. He was like, "They're making AIs that lie to you, or that lie," because anything PC, you couldn't ask it anything.
Yeah.
Anything like that. It wouldn't. He's like, "We need AI that tells the truth."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like interesting because it's not even lying. It's like it's really that's
PC.
like, well, it's not even PC. It's such an interesting problem because you've got like this chatbot run by Microsoft, and it has a certain set of values in it, and like that is like one set of values, and like that chatbot people at uni, instead of like the way that they learn now is using this thing. This is now essentially like a calculator that like is integrated into actually how we think. And like it's centralized, and there's a group of people who get to decide what the values are of how people think. Right. And like,
I mean, they've always been doing it, but now it's just getting even more.
No, totally. But
I mean, you can control like the syllabus and the values that you put in, like the science, the history textbook.
But you can't control a calculator and make the calculator say 2 + 2 is 5. Right. I mean, there's something intrinsically, I think, like incredibly
You haven't seen 1984, have you?
yeah. Well, that's the reference, right? But like that's why it's interesting, right? Because it's like it's completely fine if different people have different values to you, and like it's completely fine if you dislike someone else's values. It's another thing to like literally change how people think so that they have your values, and yes, advertising and marketing and those things have been about that, but I feel like this is now becoming like this like much. The thing about like these tools right now is like, like there's a really good generator thing I saw, whatever, there's a video I saw, but they said like, they can make a pizza, but they can't choose if it has pineapple or not, right? It's like, it's a value statement. And it's like, I don't know, like ChatGPT gets to choose if it's pineapple.
I think I think we'd want to try and avoid kind of Orwellian controls on like, what the AIs can or can't do, just because it could get pretty out of control. I mean, there's already this big culture war around neoliberalism versus, other kind of thinking.
I definitely think, though, like getting really practical about it, because I was already thinking from the product point of view of like the way this made me feel was like I didn't feel like ever using this tool again, and that's not good. And for the company, and so I think at the end of the day, like getting really practical about it, As long as you can get the false positive rate down pretty low, I think the philosophical arguments fade away because people generally can use it and they're not being told they're doing the wrong thing.
But
they're trying to
don't-
do something totally normal.
Don't you think though that these kind of laws of like how it must behave, right, they're going to be forced on an even stricter basis on like AI because
Yeah.
they'll want a system of regulatory control to stop it doing bad things, and so then it'll be like, you know, Asimov's three laws of robotics style, like I cannot harm humans or through indirect action harm them. Like when it comes to truth, it gets a bit more difficult. Like you know, like I will not project my values on.
You can't do that. Like people just do it for basic language. I mean, that's like going back to like Eastern view of AI versus like Western view of AI. Like both very important. Like imagine if you just removed one. Like I mean, like it's important that like it's important that there are different value systems. Like I feel like I wonder to myself. I've spoke. I like it strikes me that like because of how these tools work and because of it seems like they're very much like commodities. If it's a solved problem anyway, because I feel like different people are going to make these tools and those different tools are going to have different value systems in them anyway, if that makes sense. Like there's going to be like a Chinese version of ChatGPT and there's going to be a Western version of ChatGPT, but like there might also just be like a more of a like, I don't know, like a lot of different tribes of lots of different chat GPTs or something.
Yeah, I guess it's then how do you just stop runaway? Like, I mean, the one of the thought experiments around runaway AI is the paperclip problem, whereby you have an AI and, you know, it's trained, same as, say, a machine learning model. You've got an optimization, a fitness that you're trying to achieve, and it's been trained to create paperclips. And then it converts the entire universe into paperclips because that's what it's optimized to do. And so then it's just how do you how do you have a level of control to prevent runaway kind of bad outcomes?
Yeah, like that's a really good point. I guess it depends how like good these things are. I don't know, like.
Well, they're not that good yet, which is probably.
Also, how complex they are. I guess the more complex they get, the more they can, I don't know, self-regulate.
Yeah, and I think when they start working together, right? Like at the moment, it's just
yeah.
you've got like say one decisioning agent. When they start chaining together, so you've got a buyer's agent, a seller's agent, or I don't know, an agent that does and I keep forgetting what it is, the video, but another agent that does
Runway
some
ML.
other
Project Runway.
project.
yeah.
Project
Runway.
I think it's interesting that we just draw a line at agents, because it's not like a hard kind of definition. Because like say ChatGPT already is doing that in a way. It's a combination of various techniques. And could you call each technique individually an agent if you wanted to break that down? Like at what point does it become an agent, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's being overused, but like, I mean, when I played with AutoGPT, it just kind of seemed like a prompt engineering framework whereby the output was then the prompt to the new process, and it could do as many levels of recursion as you wanted to put in the core
Yeah.
algorithm.
I think like it maybe so therefore like agents should have some working memory to work with, and you should be able like they shouldn't be persistent and certain qualities around that.
I feel like you can't stop it. I mean, you can literally Control-C, Control-V, like AutoGPT. You know what I mean? Like, the moment like someone makes AutoGPT software engineer, right? It's like, boom, like, goodbye software engineers. Like, AutoGPT, Goldman Sachs business analyst, boom, goodbye. You know,
AutoGPT
Control-C, Control-V.
AutoGPT blockchain.
Oh my
There you
god.
go.
You know what I mean? I don't think you can. I don't know how they can stop those
Permissionless and
things.
unstoppable AutoGPT.
Yeah. No, it's,
I don't know. I personally can't wait to just have multiple agents just doing things for me. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
booking, doing all my admin, like paying all the bills, just coming up with things to buy, making recommendations on holidays to take.
I mean,
Like-
how wild is it that that's kind of exactly what you'd expect Siri and Google Assistant to have been doing already?
yeah, but they suck.
But they
Yeah, they're awful.
They really suck.
You know, but the interesting one is like one of the really tough problems that Google Assistant and Siri would have had for so long was getting access to data. Is giving it access to your email and your text. Like in order for an agent to be really effective, like a personal agent, they'd have to have access to everything, or a lot of your stuff, right? A lot of your comms, because you also might be messaging the same friend on multiple networks. You've got multiple contexts of conversation. You've got events here. You've got multiple email addresses. How do you coordinate all that?
And some kind of good way of searching through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I feel like I just cut in, but I feel like, that seems to be the question now, right? Because it seems like the software is commoditized, the data is exponentially more valuable than it has ever been, and it's exponentially more complicated, and there's also exponentially more data being created. Like just thinking about IoT devices and everything else. And also the degree to which that data is an extension of your personal identity has never been more of an issue. I was talking about this with my brother around, like, if you can imagine like a child growing up now, and all of the information about them being stored on something, and like that information being fed into like a neural network that like replicated all of these things about them and like took all these really important intrinsic things about them into a mesh network where like that mesh network, like it's lost, like you're not getting that stuff back. Like how is that like child, like it's sort of like a bit of like, it's like digital slavery or something, like a serious problem. It's a serious problem. I don't know, it's like quite interesting.
Here's an interesting one that but go figure that information would be so valuable to information technology.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Go figure that would be the one thing that makes information technology like feasible and valuable is information itself. That's what I mean. There's data and there's not data. Like data that's worthless is still data, but realistically, it's information that's valuable. It's data organized in just the right way. Which is kind of sort of what these neural networks are. I think one of the interesting questions is like, what is going on within the neural network? And literally no one in the world knows.
It's a black box.
It's a black box.
But I thought it was pretty well understood. Like you train an outcome, it adjusts the weights on the nodes within the system, and then you get an outcome. Sure, you can't do an audit on it. So if someone says, how did you arrive at that? You can't use it for a financially regulated industry, right? Because you can't prove how the decision was made. But theoretically, how the decision's being made. It's just different weightings on these virtual neural pathways, right?
Well, that's what information is.
Maybe
it's information.
You could perhaps have some sort of log.
It's literally your weights in the neural network
Holy shit. Yeah.
are in the correct formation to allow for information to come in and to kind of be moved about and changed, and it comes out in the right way, in with the result that you expect. That's what the hidden like black box thing within the neural network. There's some information in there.
It's formation.
It's the pattern. The
It's
pattern
in.
itself.
The inner comes in.
Like
and
the
it's
LLM,
formation.
the LLM itself is data, basically. Like the actual learning that it's done is data that's residing within the LLM.
I don't know, like what's his name? Douglas Hofstadter says like consciousness is like a recursive pattern recognition system, like a strange loop.
Oh, it's yes, it was a what was it?
I like that.
Yeah, a strange loop. That's what he's.
Yeah, strange
called it.
loop. So self-referential system.
And that's what the HAL 9000 got into a Hofstadter Mobius loop
Oh, really?
when it tried to reconcile saving the crew with the objectives of the mission.
I think that was in the book, and the movie that it's made him out to
Oh
be
yeah, and
evil.
Hofstadter didn't like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that's a. I suppose like the information is like kind of useless if it doesn't like align with like I was thinking of, like I'm really obsessed with this values part of this in a sense, and like the relationship to like language. And I know people have like moved past that whole like Noam Chomsky language thing, but like, you know, it's like when we're training those models, like when we're training like this is like a glass or this is a cow or something, like in like the English language that has a very specific meaning, and like those words we're using have very specific relationships to other things. Like a really interesting observation I had, like I started like learning a little bit of Chinese a while ago, and I looked through all the insults, and like the insults in Chinese are like not religious. All the insults in like English, they're super religious. It's like you go to hell, blah 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 blah. Like all the names in like European names are all religious. Like Michael comes from the Bible. My name is Michael. Whereas like Chinese names are not religious. Like some of them are just like, yeah, emperor's like you have a giant brain, or like you're like a fire warrior and shit. You know what I mean? Like it's like the insults are like instead of like go to hell, it'd be like you're a smelly egg.
But
You know, like they're like completely different because they have completely different sets of values,
But-
and the way that they decide on what things are comes out of the context of all of those different like language things, which are ways of valuing things and understanding things, and like the way that the formation of information happens for them is derived around like those sorts of like symbols that they show. And so, yeah, it would be interesting to understand how neural networks actually work. But I also feel like
What are the parts? Like, when we're saying like what formation is to take the parts and to arrange them in such a way, or to compose them in such a way that the sum of the parts forms a greater whole. And I mean, what are the parts that go into these LLMs? They're just data sets, right? Like vast amounts of data. And so we take all of these parts and we sum them together to form a greater whole, which is insights on the data sets.
Well, isn't it mostly just a next best word algorithm with the LLMs?
Yeah.
So and then I guess you could argue, so is your inner monologue also some kind of next best word LLM as well? I mean, it wouldn't change the fact that you're still listening to the inner monologue, which is different to the LLM, which isn't listening to anything. But
You could argue that we could, yeah, one thing we did chat about in the car was splitting the internal monologue from consciousness.
Yep.
So another interesting one is that like big amount of people, I don't want to quote random statistics while I'm on a podcast and someone can look it up on Google and say I was wrong, but there's significant.
That's the best part.
There's 50%,
makes it fun.
right? There's 50% of the population, let's just say, people don't really have an internal monologue. And that's a really interesting thing to think about.
I just saw a TED talk where most people actually do talk to themselves and have a self monologue.
Well, there you go.
Okay, we didn't need the audience. I just
Man.
But it is true to say that
Killed
there's
my whole
type A
point.
and type B. There are people that do not and people that do.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like you can have an inner monologue with three voices having an argument. I don't know.
Jesus, that's got to be a
But
condition.
the question is, is having an
Damn it,
internal
Mom.
monologue, does that make you conscious? And
no.
it doesn't.
In fact, the way you can go to sleep, one of the quickest ways to go to sleep is to have a conversation with someone you know, and your brain automatically makes that person, well, because if you're going to talk to that person, you can't know what they're going to say. So it has to be from your subconscious.
Yeah.
So you basically, if you start talking to someone in your mind, and you get this loop happening, you're off to La La Land. In fact, you could do that. Like, let's say you have an argument with someone, and let's say you're at school and you have an argument with someone. You could be in class and you could be going over what you're saying to them in your head, and your brain could be so wrapped up with that you have no idea what the lecturer is saying and no idea of what's going on all around you until the lecturer goes, "Hey, you, were you paying attention?" No.
I mean, I kind of do that all the time, but like, not always just about having an argument with myself. It could be thinking through systems or ideas or whatever.
Have you ever like tried to stay awake, but because you're so excited about something, what you do is you imagine yourself, let's say you're a scientist at the Large Hadron Collider, and you've met this Nobel Prize winning scientist, and you can't wait to go there. And so you're at home, you're about to fall asleep, and you're imagining being at the Large Hadron Collider talking to the scientist. That's it. You're gone. You're going to sleep straight away. And students do that too. They got to sleep. They got to study for a test. They imagine themselves doing the test or talking with the professor, and they wake up in their books in the morning.
Oh my God. It's like the tutorial level.
I try having conversations with like dream people and like when I'm like lucid dreaming, but it's generally it's really difficult because I'll be like, oh, I can get some insights out of my subconscious by talking to this person about something, and there's just really not that much there. And the harder you try and have a conversation, the more likely you are to wake up because it. Like, and then if you do remember parts of, say, dream conversation, it's normally doesn't make much sense at all. Like, it's all very jumbled.
Yeah, my dreams are not like that at all. I just like imagine like crazy shit, and I have like no control, and I wake up and like, whoa, that was crazy. I don't know. I imagine like fucking rectangles and shit for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay,
Like,
man, that's wild, man. I don't even dream really.
Well, you're just
know,
not remembering them. You will.
I mean, I do dream. I know because once every 6 months to a year, I might have a glimmer of remembering a dream. But yeah, it's generally not really a thing.
So maybe your brain's garbage collection is really good, but every once in a while it slips up.
I don't know.
Are you guys familiar with Jeff Hawkins and his speech on artificial intelligence back in 2008?
no, but could you please give us a synopsis?
I've kind of half forgot. But anyway, I've got this clip, and this is in 2008, mind you. I just want to play a bit of it and see what you guys think of this early insight into AI.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, let's go.
Species, you can map out all the regions of the neocortex and how they're connected together. And you can make a picture of it. And that's been done for several animals. Now, the picture I'm going to show you next is actually very famous in neuroscience. This is a famous picture in neuroscience. It's from the macaque monkey. This is the macaque monkey's neocortex. And every neuroscientist will recognize this. Probably hardly any of you have ever seen this before, but I'll tell you what it is. It's not that hard to understand. The little boxes in there, the little blue boxes, are regions of the monkey's neocortex. The lines represent how they're connected together. And so when you see a line, it's a bundle of fibers going one way and the other way. On the left side of this diagram is the somatosensory motor part of the brain, that is the touch and motor, and on the right side is the visual part. At the bottom of the picture are the sensory organs. So on the left, the skin, on the right, the retina. And information flows from the retina into a set of these regions in the cortex, and it goes from region to region up and also flows back down. This is the structure that nature uses to store information about the world. Now, this is the macaque monkey, but there's a very similar diagram for every mammal species. The human has a similar one, but we can't do it because we can't do the experiments on humans. But it's very similar to this. The macaque monkey's visual system is very good. It's just about as good as a human's. Now, already we can say some interesting things about this. We can say that knowledge is stored in a hierarchical distribution. That if I ask where in this picture is how do we know what a dog looks like or a cat looks like? It's not in any one region. It's distributed across multiple regions. Information has to flow multiple regions here. And these regions contain memory. So memory of that is distributed through the system. We can also say that the system is self-learning. You can't program it. When you're born, no one goes and says, I'm going to store this piece of knowledge here and this piece of knowledge here. All the information comes through the senses. It comes in from the bottom and it flows up. And it flows down. And the regions on their own have to learn on their own what to store. No one can tell them. And the third thing here on the bottom, the last point, is the most amazing point. I say each region is similar. What I mean by that is they look very similar. If you look at any one of these regions of the neocortex, on any mammal species, it doesn't matter, rat or human, it's the same thing. The detailed anatomy in that region, the layers, the cell types, and how they're connected together is nearly identical. They look nearly identical. And it was speculated in 1979 by Vernon Mountcastle that actually they're all doing the same thing. That each region of the neocortex, regardless of what it's connected to, is doing the basic same operation. And what makes a visual region vision is because it's connected to the eyes in the visual hierarchy. And what makes it, an auditory one is because it's connected to sound.
By the way, we know this now because we know that language models and audio and video are all basically doing the same thing. So you can go with Midjourney and give it a prompt, it'll output an image. So, and he found that out back in 2008. It's wild.
This is an amazing discovery. It's almost amazing that it took many years for neuroscientists actually to believe it could be true. But it is true, and it's one of the beautiful discoveries in nature, how it basically uses the same algorithm to solve all these problems. So it makes our job a lot easier. Now, one thing is, I'm going to highlight a few regions on here right now. They're just in yellow. And these, someone's phone's ringing, that's not me. These yellow regions are the primary regions that are associated with recognizing what visual objects look like. The neuroscientists call it the ventral pathway, the what pathway. So if I want to know where the knowledge about what cats and dogs look like, it's on these yellow regions. And we know that if you look at cells at the bottom of these, at the bottom regions here, close to the retina, they recognize simple things like lines and edges and corners. And when you get to the top, there's cells that represent very complex objects, complete objects anywhere in your visual field. A friend of mine, actually, an alive human, they found cells that respond to Bill Clinton. So when this person sees Bill Clinton in any particular way, any orientation, whatever, that cell lights up. And if this person imagines seeing Bill Clinton, that cell lights up. That's not an exception. You have cells for all kinds of things in your head at the top of the hierarchy. I suppose there's probably a Hillary Clinton cell. Maybe they're close to each other. Who knows? Now, another thing this diagram doesn't show is the relative areas of these pictures. So now I'm going to show you the same regions. We're going to be done with the neuroscience here soon. We're going to show you the same regions, but we're going to show you them in their relative area. And we're going to take all the visual regions and just show how big they are. So here's the same things. In the yellow one are, again, the what pathway. And a couple things jump out at you right away. One, you'll notice that the bottom two regions, were labeled V1 and V2, closest to the retina, very low-level information, are huge. In the macaque monkey, they represent 25% of the entire area of the neocortex. And it's something similar to that for you. Basically, 25% of the knowledge of the world that you have is low-level visual information. Not high-level things, not the big picture, these low-level details. And you can also see it's sort of a pyramid shape. The regions get smaller as you go up the hierarchy. Now, one thing that's misleading about this, you might think this is like a flow chart. Like, okay, we take the image in, we process it, we go to the next step, and so on. And that's not really true. This next picture shows you more what it's like. This shows you that it's really like the bottom region is not like one region, it's like a lot of little regions. And it's more like a tree-shaped hierarchy. This is how the connectivity shows us what it's like. This is all from biology. I'm not making this up. It's like a tree-shaped hierarchy. We have a lot of little regions at the bottom. They converge, converge, converge as you go up the hierarchy. And unlike this diagram, it doesn't show the information also flows back down. This is nature's data structure for knowledge about the world.
There's a really good book by Steven Pinker. I've read like 3/4 of, and then I got bored. But kind of goes through the same concepts of almost like having these concepts like stored almost in like a dictionary, like a Python dictionary or something, like that our brain goes and accesses and like gets that information about it and stuff like that. Which I think it seems to make sense, you know.
And when he said the Bill Clinton neuron, I mean, these neural nets now with the LLM, it looks like that's what they end up doing. The end of the neural net is the weight at the very end is the answer. It goes from, you know, millions of possibilities, then whittles its way down to just a couple of possibilities or one possibility. So it's like this guy saw it coming. It's crazy.
It seemed to be, I hadn't seen it and I hadn't thought about it in the context of LLMs, but it seems to just be talking about, you know, you're going through levels of abstraction. You start with very simple signal processing, and then it gets more abstract in the same way that you move through layers of a computer, right? From electrical signals up through layers of abstraction, through the OS, through the different layers till you get to a much higher level abstraction. And the high level would then be what he was showing with that further layer towards the end. But then I'd be thinking, okay, even if you know that much, that yes, you've got pattern recognition, it's all the same for the different signal processing. It goes to then derive bounded information, so information with context, like this is Bill Clinton, right? Then there's, I think there's still like the two bits that would be good to and maybe someone else has talked about it, to understand one of which is how does all that information get bound into a single experience? So in other words, you've got the sound, the visual, the audio, but then you still see all of that as one experience, and so therefore it must be all coming together in some way, right? From these different
Yes.
So if one piece is doing, I don't know, the sound of Bill Clinton, and another one's doing the view, what Bill Clinton looks like, then there's something that then needs to bring these abstractions together. But then the second would be, and this is, I don't understand, I just don't get this stuff. And maybe it would be more like what your brother does around like metadata classification. But how, even if you say it solves Bill Clinton, but to know that it's Bill Clinton, you would need to know the history of Bill Clinton. Like Bill Clinton started as a presidential candidate, and then he was the comeback king or whatever, and then he became elected, and then like he had an affair with what I mean is like.
But
Even
why would you need to know all
Bill
that?
Clinton, they're just imagining a formation of light particles, whatever you want to call it. They're just imagining his image.
I guess they are,
I
but
get
like,
what you're saying.
yeah, but they are just imagining his image. But associated with that image is then all this history of who he is and what
But
he was.
all they have to say
that's
is
accessible.
Bill Clinton.
Well, but it's like this. It's like when I look at a cat. Like, what is a cat? A cat is like a bunch of different objects with each of those things are like distinguishable.
I mean, that's your understanding what it means to be cat. But when someone says, "Is that a cat?" and you say "cat," and when they're getting your response, they're just getting the word "cat," and then they're internalizing that as like, "You understand what a cat is because I know
I
what a
think I
cat
know what
is."
you mean. So it's like you're saying, how do I know that what my interpretation of orange is the same as your interpretation?
And what I'm saying is that I think that, the reason we have the same interpretation of orange is because we have a similar narration of the story of what an orange is. In the same way,
Externally, yeah.
and that's a shared narration. Like I don't know, like you read the books when you're a kid and you learn what an orange is and that you can eat an orange. You know what I mean? And then
yeah, like I completely agree because it's almost like if like every single word that we use to describe things and understand things, it comes from like a historical context from different things. It's like the word "okay" came out of like a presidential campaign as like a piece of slang.
Here's an interesting one from linguistics, though. And there's two camps of the philosophy of linguistics, and that is that you're right. We shouldn't change the definition of orange ever in perpetuity because of the context of when orange was defined. But at some point in the future, potentially, we might decide that orange means something else.
Well, the core point being, I would think, right, is like the context matters. The context has a causality, and that causality like kind of creates like the meaning of orange now. But then as the different things happen around us, the context changes, and then like our understanding of orange also changes, and we have a new understanding of orange, through through time.
I think it's nice to know what orange means in the context, but I think in terms of being accurate, all you need to know is the word orange is
but you need
related to the look of oranges.
But you need a bound context, I guess is what I mean. Like, so I think the original question,
A bound context in order to do what?
in order to turn data into information. So what I mean is, like, and if you're talking, so the question was, well, isn't this what a neural net does? Like a neural net traverses and it comes up with an answer that's Bill Clinton. But then if there's no bound context of what that information means and how it relates to the rest of your knowledge graph, then
All right. So the interrelation. So there's have you guys heard of like the different types of memory? So you've got like temporal memory, spatial memory. I think the one that you're referring to may be episodic memory. So
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So
Like
you remember the five senses or multiple senses going through, and also it might be sequential memory or something like that. Anyway, there's a lot of them. But
I have very good episodic memory.
all right.
Here's an interesting one as well, based on something that he said during that talk. But he says that when you're young or whatever, and you're absorbing this information, no one's there telling you where to put the information, which I find is an interesting kind of statement to make. I think, like, how do we have the reliability of people not turning out to be completely insane?
Bound cultural context through language and symbolism.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I think as well. Yeah.
And that seems to be probably a large part of what it is, right? But even then, when you have bounded context and you have all of that, you still have a stateless thing that doesn't know where to put the thing. And at that point, if you said, like, I'm an algorithm that has no idea where to put this thing, it would never progress past that. It needs to, at least at one point, at some point in a timeline, make a decision to put something somewhere to kind of kickstart sort of the algorithm, like a seed, so to say.
So like from nothing, it's like there's sample size 0,
Yes.
and therefore you must perform experiment into new market or into new scientific area of discovery.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we will see what the experimental outcomes are, and then we'll work out what is happening
Yeah.
here. What is quantum physics?
So you kind of need to start at some point, and is that start is that just completely random, or is that somewhat deterministic?
I reckon it's that's a good question. I feel like like I don't know, on that example, if you think about science, it's like I don't know, we worked at F equals ma, and then we worked out things from that. So I feel like our shared knowledge is like the platform, and then we're jumping off that platform, but we're still jumping off the platform. It's like we're jumping into the thing that is next related. It's like actually Descartes. Go back to Descartes. If you actually read his journal, it's like super fucking interesting. Like a large part of what he was writing about was this question, which was about like, what do I focus on? How do I know what to focus on? How do I know I'm not just being schizophrenic? And so he had this like really cool analogy, which was like, if you know what like 1 is, and you know what 2 is, and you know what 3 is, you can probably work out what 4 is, or maybe you can work out what 5 is. But if you are trying to work out what a 10 is, just by like guessing and like just thinking things through in your head in this sort of way without doing things empirically and stuff like that. Like, his analogy was like, I dreamed about a chimera, but it didn't make it real, and so I feel like I kind of agree with that. So I feel like it's sort of like, like when you have we build things on top of each other, and then like we can kind of see the next thing, and we kind of get an idea about where to build. And I also think some things are random. It's like penicillin. It's like some dude just like put a microscope over like fucking moldy sandwich. Like next minute, like we got antibiotics. Like like I feel like some things are also random. I don't know, but that's my view. I don't know. What do you guys think?
There's a really good book on this called "Where Do Good Ideas Come From," and they talk about a kind of a concept known as the adjacent possible. And there's a lot of like history discussed in the book, but one of the sort of interesting points that they go through is that obviously nowadays the sort of feedback loop is greatly reduced because of our ability to communicate globally, but and travel and all that stuff. But in the past, you'd see cultures of humans invent things totally separate, on totally separate timelines with no communication, and the same thing. And these were things that we'd say that was a really distinct invention. And we kind of live in this world today where we kind of revere individuals as like gods or something. And the whole like way of seeing the world is around this kind of individual sort of genius type of stuff. But, when you zoom out a bit, a large part of people's, outcome in life is where they were born and when they were born. I mean, it would have been impossible for Einstein to have been Einstein if he was born in the year 0. So, it's pretty interesting because we do have a very kind of view about the individual, way of driving forward outcomes. But realistically, and it's also like the individual consciousness as well in driving those outcomes. And we like to lean into this idea that we have this distinct individual consciousness. But looking at like sort of the facts about how things progress, it does very much point towards like shared consciousness as like the real mechanism that produces like outcomes.
Well, like, sorry.
Yeah. I think the ideas are often in the zeitgeist.
Yes.
It's not in any one person's head. It's just slowly kind of permeating through the cultural ether, and then I don't know. It can manifest itself in a person, and then
It's like an XLLM.
Well, like another
Extra
thing
large
is,
language.
I feel like
Sorry.
no, sorry. I was just thinking a point that I did bring up is like, like when we think about AI agents, what we're talking about at the beginning was the problems it creates, and like those problems need solutions, and those problems and those solutions drive like us looking towards something. And even like when we think about like why we remember Bill Clinton and why we like think about anything, like I was saying before about light, like we don't just see photons, we see a pattern that shows a color, and we see that because it was useful to us as human beings, like when we're in like for whatever reason. So we evolved that as an evolutionary mechanism. So I feel like and I think your point historically is really interesting. I always found like like you got like Plato and Aristotle, then you also got Confucius and Lao Tzu. I can't remember his other name, but like these like dual, very similar philosophers, like very, very similar philosophers at very similar times with slightly different like ways of looking at the world, but like very like it's like so interesting. Like it's so interesting when you read about them. And yeah, similar times, but like
were those the same time, Confucius and Aristotle or Plato?
I think like they probably weren't at the exact same time, but they were very similar, and they seemed to live definitely from like far enough ago that I feel like their cultural influence and their cultural influences were, it would seem like extremely important within both cultures. And like for like when you like I mean like Plato, the forms, right, and then Confucius from memory, and then like not an expert but Confucius from memory, this idea about like how people like as balls of energy and how they interacted with each other, which was like really interesting. It was kind of very similar. I don't know, yeah, but like to what extent, like actually, yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah, now I think about it, like because like Socrates was really angry about like Greek society and people being like kind of shitty and like immoral and like corrupt council, and I think Confucius was annoyed about like warlords and like people not working together and wanted to like unify these different areas, and they're like non-experts, I could be wrong. So it seemed like there's similar problems they're trying to solve.
Same in religion. A lot of religions are based on class inequity.
Like Catholicism definitely is.
Like Christianity and the Muslim religion. They originated from class inequity conflicts.
Solve a problem.
Yeah, because when there's a large population of people experiencing a shared pain, that's one way of dealing with it.
Also, large societies couldn't progress past a couple hundred people without either a police enforcement,
Yeah,
or some sort of psychological barrier that it helps if you've got a omniscient, omnipresent supreme being that can see you steal the bread even if there's no one around, and when you die you're gonna not go to a nice place, so they don't steal the bread. It just keeps society going.
That's a really funny one. That reminds me of being a kid. My sister used to tell me, if you don't eat your sandwich, I'm going to figure it out. And so I went and used to put it in under a drain just in case.
But on that point, it wasn't just the idea of the personification of culture in terms of what you should do as the right kind of golden rule type action. Even like what I quite liked is what Noah Harari had in his, I think it was *Sapiens* or the one at Homo Deus, I can't remember which one, where he's talking about like say Egyptian, like ancient Egypt. And what he said is, well, like the pharaoh and the different gods, it wasn't so much that they were important. It was the fact that the role was important. You need to have something in the role. So if you're living in Egypt, then you're under the pharaoh, and there's this person, there's the pharaoh, and they are the personification of this empire, right? This cultural system, which works beyond 100, as you said, it works beyond 150 people or whatever. And so then for each of the gods or whatever, it was really just a way of personifying this kind of cultural force.
I completely agree. I think like it was Marx, not Marxist, but Marx said, like the way that like the work that we do and the tools that we use in our work are basically how we structure our forms of values, right? Which comes back to all the language systems and stuff like that. And like, I was talking about this with my mom, funnily enough, and like you look at a farm, agricultural revolution, you have a farm, you have like the person who owns the farm, and they have the big, like, what are they called? Like the big barns. They have barns. And barns look really similar to churches. Just putting it out there. And like monotheism like came out like with the agricultural revolution. And so I feel like,
well, I think polytheism came out with the agricultural revolution, and monotheism came after writing. Yeah.
Was it Zoroastrian? Zoroastrian. Anyway, the first one. Yeah, but you're probably right. You're probably right there. But I agree with your point in the sense that I don't know, like there's like lots of complicated things about religion that relate to like, yeah, it's like because it was obviously like, I mean, like it obviously was a very powerful thing for people that didn't have any power for like in Europe for like there to be a religion that kind of represented them in a different way that wasn't just controlled by like a king or something like that. Well, but then there was a lot of other important things about it, I think.
So I think pretty much every tribe had their own god. It was like the personification of them. And then then there were many gods, and then you had like this kind of, then you had like in the Greek and Roman god system, you had multiple gods. Then with with monotheism, a lot of it came from,
Zoroastrianism.
Well,
yeah,
there's Judaism and Zoroastrianism, and then like with the New Testament, they kind of rolled in the kind of the Greek forms and whatever as well into the mix. But yeah, no, I guess I'm not 100% sure how monotheism came about, but I think it was. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's like the culture grew greater than the individual tribe or city.
Well, I suppose like I agree with your like first point was really important. I think like it's like what is religion doing? And religion is giving people a set of rules to live under and a set of values to live under. And like how are those values formed? And like monotheistic gods are inherently individualistic, like very individualistic, right? It's like one person versus like this sequence of gods and stuff like that. It's a personal relationship with God in Europe.
It's standardized though. So you're right. It's personal. But then it's a standardized relationship across all of the, say Western society or. Whereas like what with like Eastern, Buddhism.
There is no God in Buddhism.
Yeah, they didn't have that central figure, right?
They had the Buddha and the story of the Buddha and the jhanas and all that stuff.
I don't know enough about it.
But it's much more impersonal, and as them to the point you made before, maybe that's why they have a lot less focus on the individual.
Well, I don't know enough about it to say, but I do know that like my friends who come from the background of they can see things that I can't, basically, and I can see things that they can't. So it's always like really valuable talking to them.
It's interesting because it comes from language as well. Like I know that in Russian, they have several words for blue that we don't, and they can distinguish those colors of blue. And in cultures where they don't have the color pink, they see it as light red.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
But come to a Western culture, and if it's slightly pink, a guy will just, just reel back.
It's, I mean, not even just that. On the colors are really interesting because with more primitive societies, what you'll find is that they'll have many colors for green. Like they have heaps of different colors for green, but they won't even necessarily have the concept of the color blue at all. Like even
Because it's part of the world.
I don't. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. It's just it wouldn't be seen as a different color. So even if you look back at, I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure even if you look back into the early antiquity, like early Greek writing, I don't know whether it's Iliad and Odyssey, the concept of blue didn't exist yet in writing. Like it hadn't.
Oh my gosh.
It hadn't actually, yeah, that kind of cultural concept didn't exist, and so therefore wasn't represented with symbols, like with the symbolism of blue as an example.
Oh my gosh. I do like, you know how they have nuggets of, I don't know what you call it, like hidden Easter eggs. I really think there's a hidden Easter egg right at the beginning of the Bible in Genesis about the whole, we set this system up so that we could actually, stop people from fighting each other. And what did they say? What's the very first sentence in the Bible? In the beginning, there was
Light.
chaos.
Chaos. Oh, fuck, I need to read more of the Bible.
In the beginning was
There's never
I
somebody
can't
spoken.
remember. I can't actually remember. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1.
The beginning there was light. I mean, like if
As long as there's 7 days and he rests on the seventh day.
things like I feel like things are either collaborating and like all together or they're in complete chaos. It's like general rule.
Well, here's an interesting one about human collaboration. So there's actually like a distinct and objective kind of view on what makes humans collaborate really well, and that's known as like generous tit for tat.
Oh, golden. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
And so generous tit for tat is a really great thing to know as a person to navigate yourself in your own life. But it sort of comes down to like, why do we work well together as human beings? And also, how do we recover from conflict as well?
So that's the golden rule, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing is like what you end up with if you're not willing to be generous and essentially take a risk on another person because you don't know that they're going to reciprocate the action that you're putting forth toward them. Without doing that, you're always acting in a very sort of defensive and tit for tat kind of way. And so essentially it's like, oh, they did something, I'm going to attack them back, and then they're going to attack you back. And you're just going to be constantly fighting in perpetuity. And you're going to end up in this constant recursion of conflict. And the way to break out of that is to say, hey, like, that guy's been real mean to me. I'm going to just say, maybe he was having a bad day, This is a real practical way of generous tit for tat. Like, that my colleague was really mean to me yesterday. I'm just going to think he was having a bad day. I'm going to go in the next day. I'm going to say hello to him and try to, get the conversation on the good track again. And he's going to come in and hopefully reciprocate your generosity and say, hey, look, sorry I was a bit of an asshole yesterday, and, let's get back on the right track, back towards a cooperative and generous kind of relationship. But you see, the thing about generous tit for tat is that when you get this generous relationship happening, it still has that tit for tat as the backup. And so when that, colleague in a few months' time starts acting like an asshole again, you call them out on that. You say, "Hey, man, you're being an asshole today," and that's how you sort of protect yourself from this kind of situation. And then that kind of almost forces the onus back on them, because it's this recursion, right? It forces the onus back on your colleague, for example, to say, "Hey, sorry, let me make you up for that. I'll take you out for coffee tomorrow," or maybe they're going to say, "No, screw you," and then you're going to say the same back, and then maybe you just become enemies forever.
Humans have a really, really complex, like, entire thing with that, like narcissism, dealing with narcissists, being in a, what do you call it, relationship? A toxic relationship. There's just so much painful stuff we come up with.
On the golden rule, though, one thing that's interesting, which shows it is still in some ways kind of an economic tool, is that, and I think I learned this in economics actually. So the more the cultures that apply the golden rule more, or rather, kind of people who apply the golden rule more, are people who live in small communities. So in other words, if you're in a small country town, you're going to be really nice to everyone.
So not New York.
Yeah, exactly. If you live in New York, you're going to be an asshole because, there's a concrete economic rationale to this. So if you expend energy doing the right thing for someone, if you're in a small town, chances are you're going to bump into that person again, and so it's going to be beneficial for you to be in their good books because they may need to help you in the future.
Longer game.
Yeah. Whereas if you're in New York, whatever happens, chances are you're never going to see the person you're interacting with again. So therefore, there's not as much incentive on, not being a dick, basically.
I think as well, coming from being a blockchain developer and working in, this kind of space for a long time, when you have an extreme amount of scale, you also have a much higher chance of there being a very highly sophisticated malicious actor.
All right.
And, there's only so many very highly sophisticated malicious actors out there. But the larger you increase your surface area, the more likely you are to have one of these attackers attack you, essentially.
And how would the golden rule come into it?
Oh, I'm just making a statement about this.
Well,
is sort of like
because they could tell you about the
Yeah.
thing and you could reward them.
Yeah, and so this is like this is more like less so the generous part where you get back the reciprocation, but this is more like there's a much higher likelihood of there being a very sophisticated malicious attacker as well, with a very large surface area as well.
Well,
So then you want more conditioning.
Yes.
You want more social conditioning through, say, religion or whatever other social norms in order to basically try and prevent these bad actors.
Yeah.
well, I think it's a really interesting. Is it even conditioning, or is it just the fact that the sophisticated bad actors have incredible economic incentives to be bad actors?
It
Right.
seems like that as things scale up, different strategies must be employed. This is, I don't know why my brain decided to remember this thing, but there are apparently, I remember there was 3 different levels of comedy, as in you could be really funny with one-to-one. With one other person, you could be really funny. And then the next level up is there might be just in a small group of people, you could be amazingly funny. And the third type is you're on stage with 10,000 people or, 1,000, 2,000 people, and you can be really funny. But then if you try and do the same comedy for 2,000 people on a one-to-one, sometimes it just doesn't work. Like Robin Williams talking to a interviewer. Or if you try and do the one-on-one comedy with the audience, it falls flat in its face. So it's like, I think one of the theories was when you do comedy and you put something out there, this could translate to what you guys are saying. When you put something out there, the responsibility to react is all on that one person. Whereas if you're in a group of 1,000 people, each individual only has 1/1000th of the responsibility to reply back. So the difference in delivery and the content and how your body language and how you speak, it changes depending on how many people, and there's a sweet spot for each one.
That's really interesting.
I think as well, with a larger surface area, you have a larger reward potentially. You know, if you're talking about, you know, there being more, you know, TVL in a protocol or something, that means more incentive for malicious attackers as well. So I think more importantly, it's not about the sheer like population density, but more like the value that is sort of contained within something. And so, like a malicious attacker would, if we took all the money in the world and put it within, you know, a very small space, a malicious attacker would be trying to attack that small space.
But I suppose it's also, to Stefan's point, it's also like, can that malicious attacker do something, get caught, and not have a reputation? That means that everyone knows that he's a malicious attacker, basically. Can you like flag that person, or is he anonymous, or does he? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, what's the cost of that action? And maybe it's jail time, maybe it isn't, maybe it's reputational cost, but like maybe like the cost function, like maybe the total risk return ratio, basically, for him to make a decision around like, I'm going to go and do this thing to steal money, is like pretty good for him. And also his values, he doesn't have any, probably.
Yeah, and this is an interesting thing about like building crypto economic systems, because everything is built with this in mind, is like these kinds of considerations, and that is like the whole shtick of crypto economic systems, is that they have to be extremely resilient to the point where there is like not a malicious attack under the sun you could think of that would actually be able to attack the protocol. But there's a penalty for every kind of attack.
Now the
You
penalty,
can imagine.
the penalty. Now, how about this thought experiment? So, when you go to jail, a human being feels it because the human being can be hurt. We can be physically penalized, and we won't like it. An LLM, well, I guess they have RLHF. They don't care. I mean, because they, like, you can tell them, I mean,
Yes.
in a prompt, here's the entire Harry Potter series, read it. And then I'm going to ask you about it. They'll read it. They don't care. If you ask a human to read it after 10 pages, I'm bored. I can't read this. It's torture for us, because we have a limbic system. We got dopamine, serotonin, cortisol, and all the rest of it. And we can be put into a lot of pain. So what if attacking this blockchain, whatever it is, crypto, I create an LLM and I infuse it with my personality and everything about me, and then it goes off and does it? You penalize the LLM
That's the
if it doesn't work.
powerful thing about money, because no one would do that.
Okay.
Because you like the simple thing is I did a talk on why blockchains are completely and absolutely insecure, because they aren't really deterministically, because you can fork the chain, you know. But
What does that mean? Sorry, just you can fork the chain.
well, basically, you can make a copy of the Ethereum. I mean, at any point in time, the blockchains are constantly forking. So,
All right, but how would you know? How would you, let's say you lost your own password, how would you guess your password?
well, I mean, I guess the thought experiment would be like, in what kind of alternate reality could I fork the Ethereum blockchain and convince the entire world to give me all of Vitalik's money?
Fake rug pull.
And it's not, there is a universe that occurs.
It's an attack vector.
Yeah, there is a universe in which that's possible.
So it's like with Bitcoin, when the difficulty rating was changed. I mean, like China basically had all of the mining, and so like I don't know. It would have been interesting if they like had thought about that a bit more and used it as an attack vector for taking control of it. Just putting it out there.
Because
But yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing is like there's no deterministic mechanism there that's saying anything's going to occur. It's really, again, it comes down to that, generous tit for tat. And no one in their right mind would waste all their money for nothing, for no reward. And that's what makes these systems resilient. The difference between crypto economic systems and just pure crypto on its own, pure, like deterministic crypto. Like if I took a file, like a photo, and I encrypted it, and that would be it. There'd be no more energy required to maintain the security of that thing in perpetuity.
I mean,
But
like an NFT.
yeah, well,
NFTs.
not NFTs are not secure. That's what I was saying. It's that like if I just ran, an RSA 4096 algorithm
Whoa.
on a file, and then I got an encrypted output. No amount of I don't need to spend any amount of energy, maintenance, anything to keep that file secure. I don't even need to be alive anymore. I could simply not exist. But that file will be encrypted for the entirety of the existence of the universe, and no one will ever be able to make it insecure.
Oh yeah, they will. I mean, like the U.S. government could go and like crack it if they really want
Well,
to.
potentially.
But it would cost so much money. I think the entire thing
So
about
I get you now.
Potentially, theoretically, but there are definitely encryption mechanisms that are absolutely deterministic. There's no getting past that. They're even quantum resistant. I mean, maybe in a world
there'd be a cost function associated to it. I think. I mean, like to me, that's what encryption seems to be about. Is it's like, like I suppose like, I don't know, like. Was it like Western Europe? You had like people who go and like find out what people are doing and surveil them and stuff like that, right? But they would pick individual people, right? And then like they'd move something in their house so that people knew that they were being fucking watched and stuff like that. But it cost them money. They couldn't do it across every single house. Whereas like now, obviously, it doesn't cost any money. Like everyone is like surveilled all the time. And it seems to me like that's the entire thing about. Yeah, the interesting thing about encryption is it's like a cost function, right?
Yeah.
It's like, can you make it more expensive for people to target like you, or is it free and everyone can just like be surveilled and stuff like that?
Well, because the crypto within the crypto only ensures the current state. It does not actually ensure any future state of the chain, and actually nor any past state either.
It's interesting when you said
It only guarantees the current state at the current point in time, but every other state is not guaranteed.
I need to think about that. Actually? Yeah. Wait, so that means, oh my God, wait.
Because you can fork the chain in 5 minutes' time and roll back the state, years of state in the chain. And then the chain now is 2 years ago. And that's now the current state of the chain.
So, I don't know enough about this. I'm not a blockchain engineer. Just trying to think about this for a second. Like, let's say that like I got the chain and I went back in time and like I wanted to work out people's private keys as an example.
Yeah.
And it was like much less, like it was much easier to do at that point. Is that something that people could do?
Well, because that's the thing that doesn't really change much. Like the private key, the Keccak, the hashing algorithm and the way that we do the private, that doesn't change over time. But yeah, it's more the sort of characteristics of the consensus mechanism. There was an article from Vitalik today, which roughly went over the weaknesses of the consensus mechanism of Ethereum and potential things that might happen in the future, which is crazy because I did a talk on this exactly. And now people sort of took it as like a pretty crazy far out talk to talk about future global political, scenarios and how they might lead us to having multiple Ethereum chains, all kind of working separately. So we will kind of move away from a global permissionless network towards many different networks
Okay,
because
makes
of
sense in general.
conflict.
That makes sense in general because it's not about conflict; it's about conflict of values.
Yeah. But yeah, the interesting thing is that there is no way to prevent that deterministically from happening, because that the state of the chain, even though right now you can deterministically secure it, as soon as you start confirming more blocks, that muddies the waters, and it makes it so that you can't really guarantee the future state of the chain or the past state. You can just say the current state is guaranteed and it's secured, but no future or past state. Whereas with just basic encryption of a file, like when we talk about basic crypto, it's guaranteed of future and past states in perpetuity.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like there was an interesting point I found that we were chatting about before, around like going back to the whole collaboration thing, which I find like such an interesting concept. Particularly with like we're talking about AI agents and consciousness and stuff like that, but like I've just been thinking about this a bit because it kind of relates to all the crypto stuff and all the Web3 stuff, but I also think it relates to how this AI stuff works as well. Just thinking, I know I've talked about this with you guys before, but just thinking as a thought experiment, if you can just like have an AI agent be like a software engineer or a blockchain engineer, like what sort of impact that would have on, like, let's say, I don't know, like a company's monopoly that's based upon having like highly skilled workers. It's based upon having like intellectual property. That's based upon, like I think about like Facebook. What if I could just type a code into ChatGPT and it turned out like Facebook as the software product? I think what did you guys think? I was wondering what you guys thought about like the idea that one of the interesting things about this AI stuff may be that a lot of barriers to entries for a lot of different businesses across a lot of different market verticals are going to go to zero, and that there actually has to be a different type of economic incentive system.
Okay. That like what Facebook acquired users. They didn't. The software. The software is like great and all that.
It's trash.
But the core
It's absolute
thing,
trash.
Network. It's the network
core
effect.
thing
Eyeballs.
is the network.
Yeah.
Is the people.
So yeah, if you take something like any kind of social network, the value is in the size of the network.
Yeah.
And that's why you always get one
I mean,
kind of major player.
social networks are natural monopolies.
Yeah. So like in New Zealand, Amazon didn't come in because someone set up something called TradeMe, and TradeMe became the place to do marketplace transactions. It gained the network, and then it retained dominance because these networks are closed networks, and no one has the will to try and regulate them to become open networks like what we do with telcos. Then they just have these closed kind of network monopolies until some kind of new social network comes along. So I'd say that's for like if you take the case of Facebook. But even if you take something more advanced, like you take a banking system, you're like, well, I'm going to have all these different engineers, AI engineers, just create a bank. But then you need to get all the different bits of it to work together with, the value of these companies, these big corporates, like insurance, banking, whatever, isn't the individual engineers. It's the fact that they've got this social system or this, system that covers all the different parts of what it needs to do.
No, completely agree. I was talking about one of my mates works at Uber, and I was chatting to him about this, and really clever dude. Initial response: of course not. Of course they can't automate my job. Of course they can't automate all these jobs. I work at Uber. What do you mean? We're very down. But the other cool point about it is that like Uber is, and I was talking about this as well. Like Uber just has a huge amount of data on the users that other people don't have. And actually the algorithms they're using, he was talking to me about it. I probably shouldn't talk about Uber in this podcast. Anyway, like let's just say like hypothetically, like some of the algorithms you're using aren't even that complicated. Just the fact that you have the data is what is valuable, right?
Yeah.
And like think about like Facebook just has the data, Uber just has the data, Google just has the like these companies are literally, I like it's interesting to think about like
They just have your data. That's
they just have our data. That's literally they're just knowledge banks.
yeah. So what we need to do is move it to you have your data, and then you can have your own AI agents.
Blockchain for everything.
Well, I don't think it's blockchain, but I think it's interesting to think it's like, well, I mean, like, what if?
Well,
like,
no, I mean, you can't have a federated system because that's what we do have now, and that's what we have blockchain. It's to move away from federated identity.
I'm just saying.
That's just Google sign in and Facebook sign in.
Well, I mean, I had a what do you call it? A meeting with New South Wales Health, and their systems are just all over the place.
Yes.
Like all over the place,
Yeah.
and they don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, and I suggested, well, are you guys thinking about putting my health record on blockchain? I mean, it'll be safe.
It's in a digital wallet.
Yeah.
I think
So-
I think companies and government departments struggle to do simple things because they've got so much mess and limited understanding. Like I just think with blockchain, what's the value prop for introducing a decentralized ledger for most?
Oh, okay, so like a doctor can send X-rays to a patient, and the level of, I don't know, security and privacy is.
I know, but like if you take that example,
Yeah.
like having again not. Hypothetically, if someone had done some consulting in the healthcare sector recently and found out that most of it still runs on the fax machine, do you really need to move from the fax machine to blockchain? I mean,
I don't know, like I would even like why does data need to be immutable? Which is what a blockchain
Well,
is.
it's not immutable on the blockchain either.
Like why do we need why does not every
It's immutable until it isn't.
not every type of information we have about us has to be completely private. Like this conversation we're having with each other right now, I know information about you. Like
Like,
I'm
but-
listening to you.
like people's health information.
No.
I'll tell you guys
private.
some things about the architecture. I mean, we don't want to put anything on the chain. Any like Aave, Lens protocol, like nothing's on the chain. Absolutely nothing is on the chain. Like basically, you the amount of stuff you want on the chain is as minimal as possible. It's just like the amount of stuff you want to store with the government is as minimal as possible. You just want to store the bare essentials, just your basic identifiers, right? Because you don't need any of that
So-
other data kept in there because it's expensive and
so then
I'll do
I guess
microchip ID. Yeah, thank you.
with the government, because we have this thing around privacy, all the different government departments couldn't share their data. So then everyone builds their own identity store, whether it's a telco or a bank or a government department.
But the
You know, all
government
the-
can't spy on you, then.
well, unless it's the
But they
Five
should
Eyes,
be
right?
able to in a sense, right? Because like
Yeah.
I don't know, like
I
let's
know
say,
they
let-
can spy. I mean, I worked at a ISP, and when they installed a switch, we got a call from the government saying, "Okay, we will need to be able to go in and put phone taps whenever we need to."
I think that the purpose of the original law was to prevent tyranny by having all of your information in one spot. But even though that's been circumvented by intelligence agencies, we still have this legacy of not having unique identifiers for people, right? And so, with the healthcare, you've got the individual healthcare identifier, and then you've got your Medicare number that links to that. And everyone's starting to move to having digital identities that you can then do authentication with. But so this is a bit I don't quite get, but like everyone's moving to having, everyone has their own kind of 100-point check identity services for different things, and then the government's trying to introduce their own digital identity piece. So then how does blockchain help with federated identity, or like what is it bringing?
So it doesn't help anyone that lives within the country and doesn't leave the country. Even people that leave the country, it's still not going to help a lot until you've actually operationalized these things. Like, for example, you've got you're moving countries and you're a doctor. You move to America. how do you transfer the license across effectively?
Okay.
And
so it's when
and-
you move from one centralized store to another centralized
Yeah.
store, but or like what was the guy's example today? He was talking about the bank. What was it? The bank guarantee.
Yeah, the bank guarantee for the cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is actually why there's a real natural kind of pool for anyone that's interested in finance within crypto, because it's that international sort of thing that it's de-risked from any kind of specific political regime.
So you don't, yeah, just when it's decentralized, you don't have a central arbiter, you don't have a
Yes.
central balance sheet or a central registrar. So as soon as you move beyond having, say, a government register, then it makes sense to do.
Yeah.
But for a company to just do blockchain,
It doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't
Like,
at all. Too many people trying to do that.
Yeah.
I'll be straight up with that. And like at the end of the day, it's product market fit.
So you were talking about, and I have to admit, I hear the term and I still get lost. But it was counterparty risk.
Yes.
Right. Can you just explain? Because I hear that term and I hear that blockchain is good for it.
Yeah.
But can you just really dumb it down for me? Like, what is a concrete example of how you can use blockchain on, say, for counterparty risk and a decent where you don't have, say, a centralized kind of arbiter or.
Here's a great example, and this is something that many people have experienced, and it's something that where there's a great selling point for Web3, an extremely strong selling point for Web3, and that's in content creation and social media. And a big counterparty risk is you work very hard. You've built a significant following as an influencer. Doing genuine influencing, creating great content, and then for some reason Facebook bans your profile one day, for no reason, or maybe for some reason, but it's a reason that's unrelated to you. It's outside of your control. And that's it. You lose your account. That's a counterparty risk on your assets. Your value is Facebook. Facebook's the counterparty risk. Like when you're a Facebook influencer, Facebook is the counterparty risk in that scenario. But more traditionally, counterparty risk would be, it's the risk that when you enter into like a contract, so a contract is involving two, potentially more parties, but let's just say a simple contract's two parties. And the contract states that, I'm going to give you $1,000 today. And then when your apple orchard, blooms in the springtime, you're going to give me a bunch of apples, right? For my down payment. And the counterparty risk there is that you don't give me the apples at the end. That's a counterparty risk.
But in a normal course of action, right? You can sign a contract. You get your lawyers involved. I sign, you sign, right? And then, if need be, you can be taken to the small claims tribunal or whatever, and that's managed within the state. And then, if it was so I guess what I mean is, yeah, I get the idea that you can have a contract, right, around counterparty risk, but what are the specific scenarios where having that in the blockchain with this decentralized ledger makes sense to do?
It's mostly to do with when, you're talking about very globalized, especially sort of, internet native types of assets, like your social media following, game items, stuff like that.
So anything
Also money, any kind of money, because money is generally traded internationally quite frequently.
money
any
is traded
cross-border-
internationally,
yeah.
but I mean, generally it would be traded through some kind of market that enforces like a set of rules and things like that. Right?
Yeah,
Still
yeah.
cost in the process.
Yeah, and being able to derive a proof that something will occur is important too. It's that really is like how we operationalize solving counterparty risk, is that we have a cryptographic proof that says the outcome. So when you create a transaction, it's a computer program that says, I take some inputs, and then I produce an output, and the proof is your output.
So then you just need to ensure that the parties do link to a correct ID, right?
Exactly.
Like whatever kind of identity service you're using, it needs to be a trusted source of identity.
And this is why, like, one of the
Oracle typing.
this is exactly what I was going to say. This is one of the things about blockchain that it's like the counterparty risk is the whole shtick of blockchain. That's the whole thing we're trying to optimize for, and layer two blockchains have sequences, for example. A sequencer is another example of emergent counterparty risk within blockchain specifically. So a sequencer takes a set of transactions and batches them up. Like, so let's say that you've got 100 people that are saying, "Hey, I want to do a transaction," and then you're the transaction conductor, and so you take those 100 people's tickets and you put them in your little box, and then you go to the Ethereum guy and you say, "Hey, here's all of our little transactions from our layer 2. Can you roll them down to your layer 1?" Now, at that point, what's the ordering of the transactions here? Because if I'm the conductor and I'm a bit of a nefarious conductor, and I see that you're making a big trade, you're just about to buy, like $1 million worth of Bitcoin. And so I put in a transaction in the bucket as well, and I make sure to put it just before your order, and then I put in another transaction after your order to sell. So I buy just before you buy, and I sell right after you sell. And because I'm the ultimate arbitrator of the ordering of transactions, that's a counterparty risk that's emergent.
But so going to like the example with Bitcoin though, I have a wallet. I can have as many different wallets or IDs that represent me as a party as I want, right? And each of them can have a Bitcoin balance, and each of them can be used to do transactions. And it's reasonably anonymous. Obviously, you can figure it out. But that isn't actually linked specifically to an identity.
No.
Like if I lose my password, tough, I've lost that party, right? Whereas like,
But that's not counterparty. That's just
no, I'm talking about so that's Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So then if you're trying to do contractual agreements
Yes.
and the ledger, which is essentially what you're saying,
Yeah.
then how, so like if you sign an actual
completely agree,
contract,
yeah.
if you sign an actual contract, you need to go and get say a justice of the peace or someone to witness it. Yes, you are who you say you are.
Can't just be digitally relevant. It has to be relevant in the real world.
Yeah, so exactly, because like
No,
a
so that's-
Bitcoin wallet, it's an abstract concept. It's not.
There's a startup in Australia who's working with Herbert Smith Freehills, who are creating something that solves this problem.
Because what you need is an identity service that can relate it back to a person.
Yes.
And that needs to be guaranteed to link whatever key you're using for party A to, I mean, in IT, I deal with this all the time, right?
Yeah.
Party IDs and...
Brings in the Magna Carta into the digital world.
yeah.
But the party ID then needs to be the person, right? Like, that is the party. Or maybe your buyer's agent, your little AI-based buyer's agent acting on your behalf.
No, you're
Counterparty
completely correct.
risk.
Like, yeah, it's a serious. That's a like I was talking
Yeah.
about this with a very smart lawyer, and like that's the big problem with the smart contracts is they're not like the. What do you do when the smart contract doesn't work? What courtroom do you go to?
Yeah. So you need your individual party ID of your person,
Yeah.
and then that needs to have some kind of identity service which verifies, which you use. So you've
It needs
got
to
your...
be under some sort of legal jurisdiction
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, all of these things just exist. Either companies build them for, say, registration or login, or they do 100-point
problem.
checks or whatever. Everyone builds them themselves. But then, like, the government is doing its digital identity service. So you almost need to link the government's digital identity
Yes.
service to then be the identifier used in the blockchain transaction, as an example.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and you can definitely do that. I mean, all you need to do is generate a zero knowledge proof. That's all you need to do, and you can verify it. And
What is the zero knowledge
Yeah,
proof?
sorry, just explain that.
Explain.
Yeah, so a zero knowledge proof in layman terms is a way of proving you know something without revealing it.
Yep.
And the way that you do it is You want to prove to me that you know something without saying that you know it.
Speaking tangents.
Like the secret, the secret number, for example.
Send an
And
encrypted.
I'm gonna ask lots of things about the number. I'm gonna
Chuck is
say,
bad.
is the number, let's say the number's 5. I'm gonna say, is the number divisible by 20, right? And you're gonna say yes. And then at some point, I'm gonna throw in, is the number, and we're gonna be shooting off. We're
We're
talking.
becoming the Zodiac killer.
Yeah, we're talking computers talking here. So the computers are talking very fast, right? We're talking. I'm
just wanna be
challenging you
serial
with thousands of questions, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, I throw in a question that says, "Is 5 divisible by 24?" And you're going to say yes. And at that point, that's wrong, and that's a zero knowledge proof. In a
So
nutshell,
you basically ask
it's
harder
probabilistic.
it's probabilistic and harder questions, but like the person knows the answer, so like
Yeah.
it should like over time like
But
yeah.
what-
definitely
what-
agree.
what's
So
the person that knows?
the one that knows the thing will always give you the right answer,
Yeah.
and to the wrong question, they'll give you the wrong answer because that's
But when you ring up, all you need to do is say what your name and date of birth is. You don't need to divide, what is it, like 5 by 24 or something. So, like, how does that relate? Like, I get.
No,
I mean,
so
I still don't get
this,
it. But
this is when we generate the proof so that a computer knows.
I think that's basically what we're trying to do is we want to be able to guarantee that these IDs aren't being spoofed.
Yeah.
Yeah, without revealing them.
Which is
Without-
separate
yeah.
from the digital identity piece.
yeah. I think it's
The
I think
digital
it's
identity
different.
piece is like quite I feel like is
I've always said the simplest way to identify a human is
I mean,
straight
you've
out
broken it down really sorry.
straight out the womb. Because they're so vulnerable and helpless, there's no way that they could possibly be malicious at that point.
Just an MD5 sum.
You
of
know, you
your
give them a
DNA
name,
sequence.
you
Yeah.
give them a
Five is
name, you
not
give them a
secure.
certificate, and that's it. That's their name and certificate for their life. They've got
Look,
no
You've
choice.
broken it down really perfectly, actually, because like I hadn't like kind of broken it down that sort of way, but yeah, because like I like in my head, like when I look at like what is this AI stuff leading to, it's leading to like this real importance of digital identity and this real importance of
That's
like
why Musk
that.
wants everyone to register on Twitter, right? He wants real people and
The blue
paying
check.
$8 is,
Yeah. But how does the blockchain part integrate into that? And
Yeah,
like
it's
that's the
same-
part I've
same
missed, but I
issue.
think you've just broken it down perfectly.
It's cyber
They're,
resistant.
they're two separate things. They're two very
Mm,
separate things because like they require different. Like, a human being is not going to do a zero knowledge proof,
no.
right? But like machine to machines will do zero knowledge
Exactly.
proof. So it's like you're saying before, it's like I suppose like
You need a-
verification of computer or verification of human.
You want a digital identity for yourself. Then you want that identity to be linked to all your data. You want to take ownership of your data as opposed to every company building its own data lake with you in it. Because what's happening is all the big companies are building their own kind of single view of all the people in Australia, right? Where they're figuring out who the parties are and how they relate to, what they can sell to them and whatever. And so you just end up with all these duplicated data marts doing the same thing. And then, like say the intelligence agencies have got the super one that no one knows about, right? But given we don't have access to any of that, once with cloud computing and the cost of doing these projects coming down, it should be possible to have a consumer-driven kind of data mart whereby you have an identity and your identity is then linked to all web activity or all activity about you or data about you anywhere in all these different companies. And then you suddenly have much more ownership or say in how basically your information that you've generated is then used.
In order to own this identity,
Completely
how is it issued, right? And because it's a pseudo-anonymous identity, we've already established that it's not a real identity.
No, but
But
it
you
is-
can
it is-
tie it to a real
It
identity.
is tied to a
That's
real
the
identity.
thing. Like,
It's,
No,
it's
but-
an extension of your identity.
Yeah, but the identifiers the identifiers link, but the identifier itself is.
But
becomes-
the idea, that's the thing. You need a way of verifying and knowing for sure that, say, this
like pseudo-anonymous
digital
means
identity.
that it's just a.
No, I
It's
get
just
what
a
you
number.
mean. I get what you mean. But you still want, ideally,
Yeah.
right? I mean, in an ideal world, you've got one digital identity for you as a person. And then, I don't know, like, we can figure out how, say, agents that work for you are managed, like whether they're managed through your digital identity or whatever. But yeah, like ideally, if you've got that and it links to all your web activity, then one, you've got a lot more
Agency.
you've got a lot more agency in the system.
Yeah.
And two, you can use it for doing your what I really forgot what it was called, the counterparty risk actual contracts, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Because it's verifiable.
Yeah.
Everything interlinks with that concept in so many different ways.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's like I feel like that is the AI and LLMs are the big change.
One of
They're
the
the enabler for this change.
Yeah. You need a single view, but it's a single view of you in the
And it's
the
like
data.
it's like there's different types of like the English language is public commons, right? Like everyone has that available to them, right? And then like this information I have about you guys, I have information about that. I'm storing this information in my brain. I'm sorry, right? But when you leave, I don't remember shit about you. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's like a recreation of like a way better version of recreation about how we actually take in information about the world currently, in a sense, like because that's kind of like how our like morals and ethics work. Almost is based out of that, which is like super interesting. I don't know, especially when the AI is a commodity. It just means anyone can go and build shit. If you have your data, you can plug into something, and like it's just like another version of the internet. It's
So
like a new
doesn't this
internet.
create a single point of potential security risk?
yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
I think you could copy it. Like the point is just that you have agency over it.
Yeah.
You could probably put it into something like not like a bank, or you could put parts of it into different things, and maybe you could lose some of that data. But the important thing is that like at the end of the day, like you are owning it.
I think as long as it's an open network. The problem is,
Yeah.
say, like you go on Facebook, you register, you have your digital Facebook identity, right? You're in this closed network, so therefore that's the single point of. You don't have an open protocol whereby you can,
Well,
exchange information or do transactions or whatever across different networks, right?
but wouldn't this system then make things like two-factor authentication useless? Would it be
To a
better?
degree, because you'd have such a good
Yeah.
knowledge. You'd have like you'd have
So-
like a human knowledge graph.
No,
So
but I
maybe
think
you have-
2FA though. So, 'cause, I mean,
2FA's
2FA is more about
it's about phishing protection mostly.
But it
when
won't
you,
matter
when you're
if
talking
you're
about
able to do-
identity verification, like I had to do this for identity verification. What they want is something that you know and something that you possess. And so
Oh, yeah. Yep.
the purpose of 2FA is to say chances are you've got your phone.
Yeah.
And therefore, the phone is in your possession, and therefore, it's a good way of verifying the identity. So, what I mean is, you're still going to always have the need to authenticate and authorize,
Yes.
to verify.
So what
But-
about
but-
sorry? What about a system where you've got multiple top-level authentications?
And this is
Like a
Kind of tie them
federation.
together.
A federation.
well,
Oh, right.
even better is, and this is something a term I coined at the Ethereum Amsterdam. We did a workshop with the Ethereum attestation people, discussing attestations on chain, and we came out with this term called progressive identity. And progressive identity is an identity that emerges out progressively, based on a whole bunch of data points. And so it could start with a Twitter profile and then bit of this, bit of that. And then eventually a distinct identity emerges out of something. And eventually it builds up enough kind of reputation and trust that it
It's
can
an
actually
actual
be.
identity.
It's an actual identity.
But
That
you know,
would be
like
amazing.
someone was doing
But
a startup around this. Someone was trying to do a peer network identity verification service. Or I think it was.
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
talking about.
yeah. There's been quite a few, right? There's a lot of different.
Be able to get someone's personal ontology, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of these
The
different
vectors of their actions.
protocols.
That would be
to
good
do this.
because everyone could have a different set of verified points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the way I sort of looked at it from a business point of view is that they just want to, at a very large scale, to be able to say that we're operating at a 99.9% reliability that the people we identify are genuine. And that's actually what matters. It's not about deterministically being able to say that everyone was a genuine identity, but it was to be able to say that we identified a very high probability of people. And that opens you up to a new avenue of saying, what data points can we use to get to that high probability and confidence that they're genuine?
But just to your point to your point before about would it be dangerous to have one kind of identity verification service? It wouldn't be like that. You'd have multiple identity registration services. Then you'll have these kind of data harbors which simply store identity crosslinks, which already exist today with all the marketing tech, where they bring a whole lot of different digital identities together to understand who you are, to bid for you on Google Marketplace ads or things like that. And so how that would work is you log in or you authenticate with your identity service provider. Then you're trying to do something with a different network. You have the key associated with your identity service, requests from the safe harbor, the cross-link identity. It doesn't even necessarily need to know what the identity key is, but I can say, this is my key, access that service. Then you've got the safe harbor, which is a set of cross-link keys, right? The cross-link of party A identified to the same representation of party A by a different party. Oh, sorry, by a different system. I mean, we do it all the time in IT, right? And so then you can then access that the other service without it needing to be the one kind of shared key across all the systems necessarily. Like you can just have a kind of a federation.
Private key.
Yeah.
That's exactly how we do signatures on chain too.
Yeah, so, but doesn't that still present a similar problem right at the top? If you just authenticated right at the top by spoofing somehow, then you'd have access.
Yeah. If it still doesn't solve the, if the 2FA was intercepted, but that's what I said. Like, I mean, kind of semi joking, right? But like, so then what is the best test? It would have to be like, they do an MD5 hash of your DNA sequence or something.
Why
right?
are you saying MD5 for? That's like antiquated.
I guess I'm a dinosaur, right? Like,
But I feel like
SHA-256. Okay.
I feel like one of the things about this though is that like if I have like all this information about myself in a giant graph of all these things I'm doing all the time, and like it's going to be pretty like ridiculous. Like going to have GPS, like we're having all these IoT devices going to come out, like so much of what we do is going to be tracked and put into data, right?
It already is. I mean, to be fair,
and that has like that impacts other people's graphs, right? Like we're social animals. Like what I do impacts you and has these impacts on you, and like changes your graph. And it's very clear that I would have interacted with people in some certain ways based on their changes of behavior and based on how I'm changing and where I am and different things like that. And it almost like seems like what would be the point of authentication once you have enough of this information? Because like basically like you're going to have it's gonna be like seeing like ripples in a pond, but every single ripple is like very like individualistic. It's like a telescope of like humans.
What about this? So if we have some sort of neural link eventually, sometime down the track, would part of the authentication perhaps be to test if that person is aware and waiting to be authenticated?
Jesus. That's terrifying though. I mean, what if that's just a lie and they do it anyway? And then they make you believe it happened.
Or they record your brainwaves when you last authenticated and then they just play it back through some other system.
I tell you, man, this gives me some bad memories. Like try building a GraphQL kind of thing.
I hate GraphQL.
And dealing with like, how do we create the permissions that allow one user who's a friend with another user to see their profile?
Solid.
It's a tough problem, that one.
Well,
pain in the ass.
There's a Solid by Tim Berners-Lee's. Like that's the whole. It is a tough problem because like you would need a giant ponytail to really approach it. I reckon.
I think Microsoft solved it, didn't they? Active Directory.
I mean, yeah. Like,
well, actually, they use the Microsoft Graph now. They've moved to a graph.
Talking more dinosaur ways of doing things, yeah, you can do nested AD groups, link the AD groups to metadata. Like if you're doing that on a big data platform, then you can have access controls based on your role and what metadata tags it has access to, and then you get permission to those groups, and you can have some high views that then only allow that set of information to you, and then you can have dynamic views based on the nature of the person. But that's more. I'm sure there's much smarter ways of doing it, but
it's so interesting, right? Because like we're talking about like it'd be cool to have like an AI agent go and like organize my calendar, look through my messages, and like put into my Google Calendar like I'm gonna meet with this person at this point, buy my groceries for me, but like do it with like using all the point systems so I get maximum arbitrage opportunity. You know, like just like all of that shit, right? But like I need to be able to get an AI agent to do that or to do it for other people. I need to give it permission to purchase for me, to my bank account, to
You need-
information about me and stuff like that.
We need a very complex role-based access control framework.
Yeah,
basically.
But
even
that's what-
working on like
How do you make it not complex so it's easy for consumer?
No, for the consumer, you just need to say, I consent to allowing these things to be done, or I can give explicit. It needs to be in the similar way to
Give me all your
money.
money.
You give,
Click
you can give
yes.
blanket express consent. You can have infer consent, or you can have explicit consent for a particular process to do something.
the company in the best position to do this is Apple, without a doubt.
Apple
like,
Pay.
absolutely in the best position. They've got everything integrated.
You know what? I think this is a perfect time to play this little clip, which is kind of what you guys are just touching on now. And that'll kind of lead us into the next segment, I think.
Cool.
All right, here we go.